And I should explain, I'm a lifelong learner. I got accepted into Harvard Extension School to become a degree candidate to keep my data science skills up to date. And I was presented with some data that I just couldn't believe on falling birth rates. Mm-hmm. So as someone who is involved in forecasting, albeit short-term forecasting, realizing that we've got this fundamental problem with birth rates that's ultimately going to affect, well, not just the number of potential car buyers. I mean, that's the smallest problem in this overall, but that was, something I felt almost ashamed of. Why do I know this? And then you expand that to what is this going to mean for the planet? And as a father of three, my three children were just about still teenagers then, I felt a sense of failure that I hadn't been preparing my children for the world they were about to enter into. Mm-hmm. We all, I think, are led into the belief that sure, that the world's population is growing, perhaps exponentially still. That's what I would have said at that time, based on what I was learning. And I had no idea that the actual dynamics of everything from how work is going to be like, to how society is going to be like, to how pension systems are going to be like, is fundamentally flawed. And at that moment, I realized something's wrong because, do you know what? The same trend was showing up for Germany and Italy and Japan.
South Korea.
Yeah, well, South Korea was just a little bit later, which was interesting. But something triggered in the early 1970s in Japan, Germany, Italy, and you can add Spain, Portugal, Switzerland, Austria, to cause a series of parallel trends.
You came across this data at a much broader level indicating a plateauing birth rate or population growth. Why did that disturb you? Why did you think that was a problem?
Because birth rates less than replacement level spiral downwards. They never stop. If you have fewer children that are required to replace the parents' generation, once that generation grows up, they will, unless birth rates change, which they don't historically, they stay low once they're low, you're going to have fewer people again.
So you see it as a positive feedback loop.
It is. And when you then look up, well, what do you want to find examples of societies coming from low birth rates going back to replacement level, and you realize there are no examples. In fact, there's no known historical examples anywhere. And some people
do we have enough of a historical track to consider that a concern?
In modern times, if you look at the number of countries who've fallen to birth rates of 1.7, 1.6, 1.5, when you have no single example of a country going back to replacement level, we should be concerned. In fact, we should be very concerned. If you look deeper, you can find data that if you merge together, which I don't believe anyone had ever done before, that gives you two measures. One is of societal childlessness, and the other is family structure. So the traditional way to measure childlessness is to wait till women are 45 usually, and have some surveys, maybe a census. So you're waiting to the end of the fertility window and counting them then. What I wanted to see was, what is societal childlessness today? If there's a reduction in the number of women starting to have families compared to what you would expect. We've been in a fog looking at overall birth rates. What you find is in Japan in 1974, interesting year, an explosion in childlessness, which went from 3% to 6% to 15 to 21 to 30+% in the space of about 4 years. The same in Italy, the same in Germany.
In 4 years?
In 4 years. It's a shock. It was what I call a baby shock. And then if you look at Korea, South Korea, which you mentioned earlier, if we take South Korea, mid-90s, right in the midst of a currency shock, you see childless rates were already maybe 15% there. Suddenly it goes up to, I believe, 30%, and now it's over 40%.
And this is childless at what age?
Well, when I estimate childlessness, I'm taking for the given population of women, the number of births you'd expect to have at any age, and saying, how many first-time mothers were there? And when you count up the number of first-time mothers of any age group and look at the overall population structure, you can see, well, wait a minute, there's a gap opening up here compared to the number you would expect. So, but a lot of people were saying, well, this is just about economics. Who cares? This is just about big corporations suffering. Who cares? I think people need to understand this is going to impact everybody, everybody's life. If you're living in an area where there's literally decay, dilapidation all around you, and the taxes that you're paying to your city or your municipality aren't covering the basic infrastructure, no one's going to escape from this. And I think people don't understand that. So in my case, understanding life in Detroit, and again, I really love the city and it's great. I love the people. I love the way it is starting to come back. But that experience, I think, really spoke to me that we really need to think about what this means. Now, you talk about the socioeconomic. I mean, the economics, go beyond the city and the property values. It's the pension funds, it's the social welfare funds that people think. I think I did too at the time, that the retirement, the cost to maintain each of us in a retirement is basically what the government or someone's been saving for when we get to that age.
Yeah, right.
It's not. What we're paying right now.
That's a bargain with the future.
That's a bargain. You're covering the people who are retired now.
What the government has put away for us is debt.
Debt.
Yeah. There's no savings.
And then
there's a promise.
Right. And then the debt's a problem because...
Yes, that's for sure.
If you have a shrinking number of taxpayers, the debt's not shrinking. So the repayment on the debt actually becomes worse and worse and worse.
Yeah.
But you go to Ethiopia and you meet people there and you talk to professors there, and Ethiopia used to be like that, but the birth rate right now in Ethiopia is 4. It used to be 7 or 8 not that long ago, and there's transformation happening. So you can see and feel the transformation happening in Africa, just like everywhere else. So I like to think of the analogy that the world is on a roller coaster, and countries like Japan and Germany and Italy and now South Korea are in the front car. They're over in terms of the peak of population, and sure, they're aging and people are going to live longer and longer, so we're not going to really see the drop for a little while, but we know what's coming. Africa is in the rear car. They're still on the way up, but the path is the same here.
Yeah.